Welcome to the Massif Impact Show. I'm your host, Taylor Reed. With me, I've got my co-hosts, Nathan Fort and Matthew Rowley. Glad to have you guys with us. We've also got our guest today, Heston Nelson. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Happy to have you here. So tell us a little bit about your current business, what you're doing day to day. What do you got going on?
Yeah. So I run an investment fund. It's a real estate credit opportunity fund. So we essentially make private loans on mostly commercial real estate throughout the country. So mostly multifamily value add stuff. Kind of average loan size about $5 to $15 million.
Very cool. Is it mostly? It's mostly like multifamily type properties, right?
Yep. So about 90% of our portfolio, about $500 million, is multifamily.
Very cool.
Mostly like value add. So go in, fix the paint, carpet, raise the rents a little bit. So kind of taking the class C and B workforce housing to kind of class B plus workforce housing.
Very cool. And for the investors, what are the reasons for an investor to invest in that type of investment?
Yeah, great question. So the way the fund is structured, we actually kind of pitch it as a bond alternative, but with collateral. So we make monthly distributions of all the income to investors, so they get a dividend every month. Cool. Either cash or they can put it back into the fund. You have a lot of downside protection with actual real estate collateral, and we're registered with the SEC, so we're verified and
right
and
easy to look you up.
Exactly. Yeah. You can find anything you want about us. So and then again, it's sort of a bond-like alternative with downside protection. So people feel like, this isn't going to make you wealthy, but it's going to keep you wealthy.
Yeah, no, I love it. That's what we're all about, keeping people wealthy.
Exactly. It's cash flow, right? So it's like people want cash flow every month, whether it's a retired person or even a family or a family office. They like having that consistent cash flow every month.
And to have that option and be invested passively versus like having to go out and manage my own
100%.
Portfolio, it's a huge save of my time too. So.
And the other interesting thing or positive thing for the investors is they can have relatively good liquidity with this. So it's about 30 days that people can generally get their money out, as opposed to being locked up in a private equity fund for 5 or 10 years.
Yeah,
so
that's very cool.
Because we get a lot of cash back from loans every month. We have our average loans are like 15 months. And so we get tons of cash coming back every month. So we can offer really good liquidity to people with, a good dividend.
Very cool. And you're making these loans to the builders and developers of the properties, right?
Yeah, so we don't do any construction loans or, development loans. So yes, they are sponsors, meaning they're going out and raising capital and investing in, so we've done a ton of stuff. That's why I'm in Phoenix. We've done probably $200 million in loans here in the last 12 months. Mostly people buying older apartment buildings, fixing them up, and then renting them out. So cool. It's more along the safe side of the real estate.
Which is why it's so stable,
exactly.
Is because you're making the loan. You're not like actually buying the asset. And
100%.
You're not as susceptible to the market and stuff, right?
So our average loan to value is like 65% across our whole portfolio. Yeah. So we could have a massive correction, even worse than a 2008 and 9 correction.
And see no
losses of principal.
Yeah, very cool.
You have a first lien position?
Only first lien position, yeah. So we don't do any subordinate debt.
That's pretty strong. First lien, 65%.
Yep. So, that's it's funny going into this recession that I think we're going into. It's actually probably the best place I think to be on the investment side, because capital is drying up, but people still need a place to live. They still need a place to work. They still need, industrial places to go and have their businesses. And so,
and investors need cash flow.
Exactly. Yeah. And banks and everyone, it's funny when you need banks and those types of places the most, they dry up. So if you're trying to go get a loan right now, good luck.
Yeah,
that's why they come.
Terms
to us.
Are harder now.
So the last 2 years was tough for us because we don't leverage our portfolio, so we don't borrow money. It's all equity that we invest in, and so we kind of look like idiots the last 2 years because we didn't leverage our portfolio.
Sure.
And now we look like the smartest guys again. We're looking pretty good again.
Yeah, smartest kids on the block.
Exactly.
So maybe for folks who aren't familiar with investing in multifamily, talk about how it can be beneficial during inflationary periods.
Absolutely. So the asset classes we like the most are multifamily, self-storage, and industrial. And all of those are going to be very, very good in inflationary environments, partly because, typical lease in a multifamily project is 12 months. So every 12 months you can reset your rents. So at a higher basis. And same with self-storage. You can actually do it monthly with self-storage, right? Because every month you can reset your rents. Industrial is a little different, but there's such a lack of industrial properties in the country right now. And obviously we're going to more e-commerce and things. And so the inflation is fantastic, but it's more about people need a place to live and work, so like single family home prices are going to go down, but multifamily prices are probably going to continue to go up because rents continue to go up. When people can't afford to buy a house, well, where do they go? They've got to go rent a place. And as we go into the recession or potential recession, people still need a place to live, and they have to find a place to call home.
So what made you want to get into real estate, or what you do specifically? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so I actually kind of fell into it in the last recession. So I'm actually an attorney by trade, and so I worked for a firm back in 08, 09, and actually we were buying distressed real estate debt. So when the FDIC was, banks were failing and everything, we were buying the debt secured by all this real estate for 30, 40 cents on the dollar. So I was actually a practicing securities attorney before that, and I kind of fell into the real estate part of it from the debt side, and that was buying loans. And then I actually worked for a family office right after that, and we started buying up real estate, and I just started to really love it. And then about 8 years ago, I launched this fund with Keystone National Group, and I like being on the debt side more than the equity side. I mean, you're never going to see the home runs.
It's a little safer.
Yeah, you're not going to see the
stable.
You're not going to see triples and home runs, but you're going to hit singles and doubles. And I'd rather hit singles and doubles for 50 years than 30 years of
slow
nothing and then hit a home run.
Yeah, slow and steady.
We make that argument as advisors and wealth strategists that there's an appropriate place in every portfolio for stability.
Absolutely.
There should always be an allocation to cash flowing secured investments.
Well, and the other thing that I like about our business is we're not necessarily affiliated with like the overall stock market, right? So, I mean, the market's down, 15? I mean, it's up this week, but the market's been down 20, 25%.
Yeah.
Our fund is up 7% for the year.
Right.
So, we tend to not lose money, but we tend to, like you said, slow and steady.
Yeah, which oftentimes is preferred. A lot of our clients, they've, their highest ROI is always going to be whatever their main hustle is, right? Their day job, their company that they own, whatever. And we're never going to be able to outperform that metric. So a lot of it for us follows kind of what you're saying, where we're trying to just have that kind of slow and steady growth. And if you can get 6, 7, 8% consistently over a 50-year period,
Exactly.
and then what we specialize in is making it multi-generational, creating systems that will carry on for the next 100 years, right? If you can make that 6 or 7% generational, it becomes really significant. You can have some huge impact in the world around you.
We like to have, I say we're part of the stool, right? We don't.
Right.
You have your public equities, you have your real estate, and we're kind of in that private equity, private credit,
Right.
private debt bucket. And
Right.
I think it really rounds out a portfolio as opposed to, so many advisors like it's a 60-40 portfolio of stocks and bonds. Well, that portfolio this year sucks.
Oh my gosh.
Terrible.
Stocks
Yeah,
and
it sucks.
bonds,
Both.
hammering.
Yeah,
Both
exactly.
of them,
So
yeah.
I say, hey, have that. That's fine. That's you're going to do really well over a 40-year period doing that. But
Right.
you still want to have your slow and
It's gonna
steady.
be a roller coaster ride to some extent.
Exactly. And this is designed to not be a roller coaster. This is designed to be, I sleep at night. I'm never going to lose my money. I mean, not never. I guess there's a possibility, but it's a safe and steady. I got to say that for compliance.
Of course.
Got to say,
There's the attorney.
Exactly.
Yeah, the attorney's coming out
It's supposed
right
to be
now.
safe, steady, and hey, I get a check every month, and I just live off the dividends.
Yeah, which is not a bad way to go.
So
I mean,
you were
that's-
always dreaming of being an attorney growing up, huh?
I kind of was actually. It's interesting.
Yeah.
So I don't know why I say that. It seems like it's such a terrible profession in a way, because you
Get a bad rap.
You do. But so I had 2 uncles that were attorneys, and my dad actually went to law school as well. So I was kind of destined for that. I really wanted to be a doctor, but I literally cannot stand the sight of blood at all. So I was like, I got to go do something else.
Small problem with
Probably
it.
not
Yeah.
the job for you.
No,
Probably not.
definitely not. Definitely not.
So you grew up kind of in an attorney household, and then here you are working in what you do now. So did you ever see yourself making that transition? I mean, or were you always kind of pushed more towards being an attorney? Or just, I guess, help us understand what made you decide to be more entrepreneurial growing up, or I mean now,
Yeah.
versus how you grew up. Is that in line with what you grew up with? Is it against what you typically grew up with?
Well, so my dad actually didn't ever practice law, but he has a really interesting story. But he's kind of the opposite of you. You didn't love school. My dad loved school. He got a PhD, and then he went to law school, and so he was all about education. So I think I was always pushed into going to school. I don't think it was ever the alternative, like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm going to go start a business. It was like, no, you go to school and you get a degree and you go do something. I mean, that's kind of like the old
Right.
school way.
Yeah.
And so I always figured I would do something like that. But once I kind of got through law school and I saw kind of your life as an attorney. Your life never gets better as an attorney.
Yeah.
You
life?
work more. Yeah. What life? You
Yeah.
work more and you never have financial freedom. And so I really like the idea of starting a fund or starting some sort of an investment vehicle where I'm not always working for someone else. Like, yeah, we have clients and we have investors, but you know, I can still have a life and do the things I want to do and hopefully make people money and be successful at the same time.
You probably credit some of that to the, no pun intended, credit, but to the 2008 financial crisis.
Definitely.
Right? You were in a position where you saw an opportunity, right?
Absolutely. No,
Is
I mean,
that where, did you get some of the ideas about having your own fund out of that experience?
For sure. So, you know, obviously I had a much different experience during that than a lot of people. Like most people, you know, lost their jobs or lost their homes. And we were kind of on the other side. We took a lot of investor capital and went out and bought these distressed assets. And it was just a really interesting time to see how people reacted to it. And, you know, it really truly is the mantra that when there's blood in the water, like that's when you want to capitalize. And so that's when people made their fortunes. People don't make their fortunes when they're the best of times. It's actually the worst of times when you can capitalize on inefficiencies in the market. So like, for example, the next couple of years, I think there's going to be a lot of inefficiencies in the market. And so for groups that have gone through 08, 09 and have seen how to do it and how to make it, I think the next 2 years are actually going to be some of the best years for groups that have capital.
Right. Easy to place capital in inefficient places for
Exactly.
sure. Yeah.
Exactly.
No, I love that. So growing up, where did you grow up, by the way?
I grew up in Salt Lake.
Salt Lake.
Yeah.
So in Salt Lake, were you surrounded by, you know, entrepreneurs? Were you surrounded by other lawyers outside of the family? Like what was the environment like growing up, and how did you think about money growing up? Was it this tool to be used? Was it an evil thing? Like how did you conceptualize that?
Yeah, no, money was really tight when I was young. I mean, my mom was a second grade school teacher. And my dad, you know, he went to school. He was a perpetual student, so he never had any money.
Right.
And so he actually ended up working for the quasi-government agency. So he actually was stationed in Mongolia and the Ukraine and all these different places doing small and medium business development. So there's not a lot of money in those types of things. And so, you know, we didn't grow up like destitute, but we definitely didn't have a lot. And my parents got divorced when I was like 5 or 6 years old. And so we even had less money at the time. And so, but what was weird is I kind of lived in a really good neighborhood. We were like the poorest people in the neighborhood. So all my friends were rich.
Yeah.
And so I kind of saw how they all lived their lives and their families and got to go on their vacations and, you know, wear their Jordans and have those kind of things that I always wanted to have. So I saw that as freedom, and I even saw it as happiness, whether that's true or not. But I kind of grew up feeling that way. Like, hey,
so were you inspired by that?
Exactly. So and all my friends kind of drove me to do that too, to be successful. They were all really smart. You know, most of my friends went to Stanford or, you know, Harvard or things like that. So they drove me to want to do those things. And then I just always found that if you can make it, you have the freedom to do the things you want to do. I just didn't want to be a 9-to-5 grinder my whole life where you just work and you come home, you work, you come home, and it's just very unfulfilling.
Yeah.
Has your wife been on the same page with you? 'Cause I know sometimes entrepreneurs have a challenge with a spouse who's maybe not quite as willing to, you know, roll the dice and take risks, and maybe talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, no. So I recently got married 2 years ago.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
I'm actually finding out the gender of our baby today.
After this podcast.
So after
Right here, right now on
If we
the
had
show.
known this before, we could have arranged it in the studio.
We should have
but-
done that actually. So
Yeah.
So her
funny.
sister lives down
Wow,
here. And
congrats,
so,
man. That's
yeah,
exciting.
First baby. So I'm 41, and so I'm a little older on the older side to have a first child. So it's kind of crazy.
That's so exciting.
So, but no, she's totally on board with what I want to do, and I don't feel like at this point like taking a big risk is that bad of a thing. I mean, I think you can always fail, but the times that you fail, you actually learn the most. The times that I've had where I've lost a job or I've done this, and you're like, oh man, it's the worst thing that's ever happened to me, end up being the best thing that ever happened.
Right, puts you on track for the next best thing.
Otherwise it would have taken you a totally different track. And I look back and I'm like, well, if I wouldn't have lost this job or I would have done this or this, I wouldn't be where I am today. You know, when I worked for this family office, I was like, oh, this is a great place. They have, you know, billions of dollars to invest. And I ended up taking a risk and leaving to join Keystone to start this fund. And at the time, the fund did not exist. Like Keystone had other stuff, and they were doing fine, but my fund didn't exist. And so it was either fail and move on or make it successful. And so we've grown it, from almost nothing to $500 million in the last, 7 or 8 years.
Well, and either way, you're taking a risk, right?
Exactly.
I mean, you could take the risk of being your own boss, or you could take the risk of being at the mercy of a boss, or an institution.
Exactly. 100%.
Right. So it's not a bad thing. It's just understanding the type of risk you're wanting to take and calculating it.
I was going to say calculated risk is what matters. You don't want to take reckless risks, right? That's same with investing. I think it's all about risk adjusted returns, right?
That's right.
So you don't want to take too much risk for the reward. And so, but I think you have to take risks to get that reward. It's not, if you play it safe.
And you don't have to be frivolous with
Exactly.
it, right? You can calculate, you can understand it.
Yep.
And I always recommend that people who are starting a business, that you take a risk you understand.
For sure.
Right? Like don't get into something you know nothing about, or at least make sure you have a partner that can bring that understanding.
Yeah, I mean, I think taking risks is part of it. You have to take risks to get the reward. Otherwise, you're just going to play it safe, and you're going to be that 9 to 5. And so to get where you want to go, you still have to take some level of risk.
So if you have been, as you've been experiencing success in business, what new challenges have come from that? Because before the success, there's a certain category of challenges, but then, some people believe, when the money comes and the business is doing well, everything's great. There's no problems. We know that's absolutely not true. I'm curious to know, for you, like personally, your personal life, maybe even your marriage, or
yeah, definitely.
And how are you dealing with it?
Yeah, it definitely comes challenges. I mean, so for a business like ours, where we do real estate, we do stuff all over the country, right? So I'm on the road, like looking at properties or meeting with investors or speaking at conferences. So, I'm gone a lot. I'm gone probably at least once a week, maybe more. So it definitely takes a toll on relationships, but I actually enjoy that part of it, though, which is kind of funny too. So it takes a toll at home, but I think that's when you go out and you meet people. Like, I mean, it's so interesting to be able to come down here and do something like this. If I was just sitting at home, being the normal desk jockey, I wouldn't be able to have opportunities to do stuff like that. So, there definitely are challenges. And then in a business like ours, you have different factions, right? You have investors, you have borrowers, you have, all these other different groups. And one of them's there's always something wrong with one of them. It's either investors, want this, or borrowers want this, or, these guys want this. And so there's always something that's out of balance. Like if I had balance, like I wouldn't even know what to do with myself, because
I think for entrepreneurs, work-life balance is a myth.
Yeah.
Like it's not. People that are searching for work-life
no
balance
such thing.
should not be business owners in any sense.
Well, it's funny because like, oh, you go on vacation. I'm like, well, yeah, I went on vacation, but I was working the whole time.
Right.
Or yeah, I'm like doing this, but I'm just closing a deal or trying to raise money or do all these things. And so you're right. There isn't really I'm on vacation. Like there's no such thing.
It's really hard to truly get away from it. Yeah, it's like part of who you are.
Yeah, and that's part of being. But I think that's part of being successful too. I think if you can turn your mind off like that and truly just check out, like I don't know how dedicated you are to your craft, because you should be thinking about something all the time.
I know. I grew up in a very we had a lot of financial struggles when I was growing up. I can relate to your experience, and I can see how some of those early experiences with money and financial difficulty have actually been a great asset. Later in life, I've gotten certain motivation from it. How have you found that your early experiences with some of the financial difficulties your family had have helped you?
Oh, I think it's helped me immensely, because I see a lot of kids that grow up really wealthy and they don't know how to manage money. They don't know how to manage success. And so I think growing up not having a ton, you really appreciate what you have now, and so you don't treat it lightly. So it's like the first time you get a bonus or something, you don't go out and buy a Ferrari. Like I went and put it in my fund, right? It's like those are the types of things that I think are different when you grow up. If you grow up with something and you take it for granted, and when you don't grow up with something, when you get it, you really appreciate it a lot more. And so I think that makes a big difference, for at least for my situation.
So you can take your mind back to those days as a kid when you didn't have what you wanted.
Oh yeah, I always wanted. Well, luckily I always got the one pair of Jordans every year. That was my thing. I was like, I got to have my Jordans. I thought I was going to be a professional basketball player, like we all did, of course.
Yeah.
And so every year I was like, I got to have my pair of Jordans, and it took a lot actually to kind of get that, And so I appreciate now that the things have maybe gotten bigger and a little more expensive, but I really still appreciate that I have the ability to do if it's to go buy a car or go on a vacation or whatever it is, it's like it feels like it means more than if it was just like that was my normal life.
Do you have ideas for how you want to, for your son or your daughter, whatever it is?
We don't know yet.
So we don't know yet.
I'm wearing blue, so I think it's a boy. So
a little more blue. Oh, we got some purple over there.
I can't decide.
He's
I'm
in the middle.
Yeah, neutral.
Have you had some thoughts about how you want to shape your family's money culture? Because I think sometimes, like you just pointed out, if you're kind of born into it, there's some challenges there too. Because you don't want to rob your kids of that opportunity to get gritty and understand hard work and get dirty. And have you had some thoughts about how you want to shape that and what maybe traditions or culture you want to put in place?
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm actually probably, because this is our first kid, I think I'm probably more. I'll spoil my kid. I will spoil my kids too much, and my wife's already saying we're not going to spoil our kids. Like our kids need to work. Because she had 3 jobs, growing up, and I was in school all the time, and so I don't want my kids to ever feel like they're entitled to anything. So even though they may, grow up and go play golf or tennis and do all the things that rich kids do, or where they have families that aren't struggling as much, I don't want my kids to feel like that. They need to work. They need to be successful. They need to do well in school, and it's not like they're just not going to be those spoiled kids. I don't want one of those. That would be tough.
Well, you get to determine that. You're right at the finish. You're right at the starting line, right?
Yeah.
It begins pretty soon. When's the due date?
So like March, April. Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
That's exciting.
So
you should listen to Nate. He's got 6 kids. He knows exactly what he's talking about right here.
I'm not a pro in any sense of the word. So
Experienced.
You're experienced. Exactly. You're a KG vet by now.
That's right. So when you were starting your own fund, I mean, you say that because it's a thing of the past. You started your own fund. Like, I just started my own fund. That's like, we can't brush past that. It's a big deal to start your own fund. Any fear there? I mean, you mentioned that you weren't afraid of failure. You knew it would teach you something, which is a great mindset. But, what were your obstacles? So if it wasn't fear, what were your obstacles when you went to start your own fund?
Well, I was really lucky that I partnered up with a larger group, the Keystone National Group, and I had really great partners, and they were very successful. They knew what they're doing, but growing it from basically nothing to where it is today, there's a million challenges and a million risks, really. I mean, I could have failed in the first couple months, and early on we had a couple deals that kind of started to look like they were going to go sideways, and so you just have to work through them, and it just takes time. Like you said, I think grit was like the perfect word. You just kind of have to deal with it, figure it out, and make it work.
Was there ever a time you relied on somebody else doing you a solid or doing something kind, something that without them you just wouldn't have made it, and you had to rely on the kindness of another in order to be where you are today?
Oh, I'm sure there's too many to even recount. I mean, I've had so many really, really good people in my life. I mean, when I was young, like I said, my dad worked overseas, and my mom was remarried, and so I was kind of like a feral child. I was like, but I was really like
street kid.
A feral child.
But what's funny, it actually probably shaped me even more because I had to be responsible. I couldn't go and like all my friends would go mess around and be your typical teenager, and I'm like, oh no, we got to do this. We got to be, because I was my own boss at 12 years old. Like no one was watching me, and so. But all my friends' parents helped take care of me. And so I had so many people around me that would take care of me and realize like, hey, we need to kind of help this guy out and make sure he's on the right path. And so there's probably too many to even recount.
So have you had some good opportunities to pay that forward now that you are where you are? I
think I will have more. I have a really good group of friends and family. And so, I want to repay that to as many people as possible. I don't know how to do it exactly. I guess that
and it's hard to know when you have.
Exactly.
Too. I mean, there could be a whole lot of people, thinking about you years from now and what a great influence you were on them, and you had no idea.
Yeah. So I actually appreciate when people call me and like this, like, hey, tell me your story. Like, how did you deal with this adversity or this, or I'm going through this something similar to you, and it's always fulfilling when you can kind of tell people your story and they take that and they're like, oh wow, okay, he did it this way and look where he is now or something. And so I appreciate when people ask those types of questions.
Yeah, I get that. So when you wake up in the morning, you're like ready to charge hard every day? Are you pretty amped up about what you're doing? Is there a grind to it? Is there like any sort of mental struggle there at all?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above, actually. So I actually really love what we do. It's amazing. We've built a really good business, a really good brand. So
What's your favorite part?
That's a great question. I know I work with so many interesting people, right? So like I said, I get to sit down with people like you. I have amazing investors. We have amazing, borrowers and sponsors. And so I think the best thing for me is just meeting so many interesting people. I think I just wouldn't do it if I was just an attorney at my desk doing documents all day. Like I get to go out there and meet people, guys with 6 kids. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Super interesting.
So I think the dynamic of meeting a lot of interesting people in different fields. So, investors come from all walks of life. You have guys that sold their businesses for $1 billion, and you got a guy that, was digging ditches, but he saved his money and he became a millionaire. So there's just so many interesting people that you get to meet in all facets of what I get to do. So yes, I am amped up, but there's a lot of grind to it. I mean, you're going through market cycles and you're going through different things. I mean, COVID was a very interesting couple years being kind of in real estate. And so there's just always bumps in the road, but doesn't mean I'm not excited to do what we do every day.
When you were starting your fund, like what would you say was the biggest obstacle to get started? I mean, obviously there's raising money, right? Raising money is tough. Getting people to hand that over is always a difficult task. Beyond that, what was the big challenge getting started when you first set up your fund with Keystone?
Yeah, it was finding people to almost let you lend them money, because people have to trust you, right? Because a lot of people when in this business, like, you have to be able to perform. So if someone's coming to you and say, hey, I need $10 million and I have to close on this deal in 2 weeks, or I lose $1 million. And I go to them and say, yeah, I can close on this deal, but I don't have the money. And so people have to trust you. And so it takes a lot to actually do that. So when we first started, we were doing deals for like $100,000 on a fix and flip small home.
Just to build trust.
Just to build trust and track record, right? And so as a fund manager, people always, investors and people don't want to be the first ones in, right? They want to see how it goes for a while, and they go,
historical.
Exactly. So you kind of have to build that, and that was the biggest challenge, was just building enough of a track record and getting trust from all these different factions of people. And it took a long time. And so now our average deal is probably $10 million that we do, and 7-8 years ago it was 100,000. So it builds on itself, but that was definitely a challenge.
What would you recommend to other entrepreneurs that are getting started, trying to build trust with, a group of people or whatever? What would be the steps you would tell them to follow to build that trust?
That's a great question. I mean, I think a lot of it's just innate in how you deal with people, and you have to instill confidence in someone that you're on the other side, right? Your counterparty. You can't be nervous, and you have to instill that, yes, I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do. And so, and you have to do it. That's the other thing too. Is like, if you say it, you actually have to do it.
It's not just all intention. Like, you have to actually take action.
That's the thing. The biggest thing for us is the first time you miss something or you don't do something you say you're going to do, you're dead. Yeah. And everyone loses confidence. It's like a domino effect. Yeah. And so absolutely. I would rather tell people no early than give them a really late no later. Yeah. People can take a no now, and they'll figure it out. But if you want, lead them down this path and then you don't perform, it's 10 times worse.
Right.
So
destroys the trust.
I think doing what you say you're going to do is a big thing, and then just instilling that trust in others that you can do it.
Yeah. Well, it impacts your own performance too, because you've just demolished your own confidence in yourself. You become somebody that you can't even rely on.
Right.
Well, it takes a lifetime to build a reputation, and it literally takes 5 minutes to tear it down.
When you were deciding on where you were going to partner for your fund, what made you decide on Keystone versus another group?
So I got really lucky. They were sort of starting to launch this fund, and they wanted to find someone to come in and run it. And so, like I said, I was working at a family office actually, and the way I actually found Keystone was we invested in some of Keystone's funds from the family office. And so I had really good rapport with the owners of Keystone and the managers of Keystone. And so I told them, hey, if you guys ever sort of launch a new vehicle, I want to be a part of it. And so they said, I think I finally hassled them so much. I was calling them and taking them to lunch and emailing them, and I think they finally just said, stop calling us, like, come over and
how do we get rid of this? And
how do we get rid of him? Let's
hire him.
Exactly. So I think that's another thing.
That's a great lesson,
is
right
persistence.
There. Yeah.
And it really was. It took like a year and a half.
You want it bad enough? Prove it.
I think it was a year and a half, and I finally just said, like, I literally think they just said, fine, come over here, take the risk. If you can make this thing work, great. If not, they still had a very good core business. I mean, they were still managing $1 billion or maybe a little less than that at the time. And so they were like, hey, if you can make this work, awesome. If not, like, cool, good luck.
Yeah.
And it worked out really well.
A year and a half. So if you had to guess, I'm just going to give us your best guess, how many emails you sent, phone calls you made, lunches you went out to over that year and a half.
It was a lot. I mean, I probably at least once a month would email. I went to multiple lunches. I tried to call each other person in the firm too. So, I mean,
4 to 5 touches a month, probably at least.
Yeah.
So a year and a half was at 18 months.
It's enough to be annoying.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
90
Well, that's
contacts.
it's a balance, right?
It's a balance between
you have to be
annoying
just
and
annoying
persistent.
enough, but not too annoying where you
Well,
turn
now they
them
resent
off.
you.
Exactly.
They want you to
Exactly.
fail.
This terrible person needs to leave us alone.
Exactly.
Yeah, no restraining
He
orders.
found the
Not yet.
balance.
Not
He
yet.
found the balance.
Exactly.
Excellent.
And how do you find that balance? We joke about it, but it's a good question, right?
It is hard because it's funny.
Yeah.
It's still that way in certain aspects today, right? Everyone's kind of in the wealth management business. Like, you're trying to reach out to new investors or new borrowers or things, and you have to be persistent enough to where people are busy, and so you have to be persistent enough for people to respond. But if you do too much, you instantly turn them off.
It's like disrespectful to their time.
Exactly. So you have to find a balance, and sometimes you don't find it. Sometimes you take it too far, and then you've taken it too far.
Lately, I've been
sounds like you've done that.
I've done it. I've done it all. I've done it all.
He's tested.
Hey, I would
You're
like
very
to
convicted
I would
about
like to
that
hear
lesson.
this story.
Oh,
I
no,
want to hear about the time you took it just a little too far on the persistence.
Well, so actually, first one was with my wife. Actually, it was pretty funny.
Yes.
It took me about 5 times to get a date with her, and she stood me up 3 times. And I actually told her she stood me up twice, and I said for the third time, I said, I'm a really persistent.
Stand me up one more time.
I
I'll
literally
marry
did
you.
this. This was a text. I texted her.
Threatened her with marriage.
I texted her and I said, I am one of the most persistent people you'll ever meet. You need to go out with me, and if you don't, cool. And she texted me back right then, and we went out the next day.
No way.
But she'd already stood me up 3 times, so that was kind of the balance. I was like, I pushed it to the brink, and then one more I was done, and that was all it took.
Persistence, right?
Greatest deal you've ever closed.
Yeah,
Greatest deal I've
right.
ever closed. Exactly right.
That's awesome.
That's so awesome.
And it came with a son or daughter.
Son or
we'll find
daughter.
out.
Yeah.
Found out this afternoon.
Yes.
That's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
No,
Big deal.
that is. I mean, the persistence thing is tough, though. I mean, I think we all have struggled with that, right? I've started telling people, like, listen, I'm going to be really persistent with you. If it's too much, just tell me. So, like, I set that expectation on the front end so that people can be like, hey, man, just once a month, like, follow up with me next month. And I'm like, okay, great. So I've just started doing that in the last year. Like, I'll start, from right when I start building the relationship, I'll set that expectation of, like, I'm going to follow up with you every week. And they're like, no, that's too much. So then I'll do it every month. But that has helped a little bit. But it is tough, like, testing that because each person's different.
Exactly. Some people are like, I don't mind you following up every week.
Some people want you to text them all the time.
Yeah.
Or,
Well, and it's kind of the way you do it too. It's your tact,
Right.
and
For sure.
the
You
way
have
you
to.
present yourself. And
So you're 41,
I am.
and you said you started your fund about 8 years ago.
Yep.
So 33, you start your fund. That's young.
It is young. Like I
That's
said,
young.
though, I had really good partners. They had a lot of trust in me, and I already done enough to kind of prove myself that I could make it. But the real key to that was the persistence, right? Because when you start something like that, or a business or anything, like, you could quit the next day. I mean, you could quit every day for a long time. It's that hard. There's so many bumps in the road, so it just takes a lot of that persistence to just keep going and figuring it out.
what would you say what was driving you more than anything else?
I hate failing. I hate that feeling of trying something so hard and then just giving up. And so, like you said, there were times that first couple of years where it would have been so easy to just be like, it's just so much work. It's so hard. I'm not doing as many deals as I thought we were going to do, or this or that. And so I think the persistence just goes back to being persistent like that.
How do you know when a cause is worth pursuing with that amount of tenacity, right? Because, like, I could set out today and say that I want to go, be on the Olympic ping pong team, but that's probably not, like, worth my time at this point in my life, right? So how do you know when your cause is one that's worth giving that much persistence to?
I don't know. I think that might just be like an internal metric, right? Like, for me, this was sort of the career path that I wanted, and I felt like this was my opportunity to grab it. And if I didn't grab it now, I didn't know where I wanted to go from there. So for me, I was like, I have to find a way to make this work. And I love what I do. I love the people I work with. I have a lot of support. So I need to figure out how to make this work. And if I didn't, then I honestly don't know what I would be doing today. I wouldn't.
Back to being a lawyer in an office somewhere.
And hating my life every day.
Right. I think it's a balance between like, desire, ability, and like opportunity. And when those three things come together, it creates this thing that's like worth pursuing, right?
Yep.
Which of those three things do you think you had to work hardest to create? The desire, the talent, or the opportunity?
Probably the desire.
Yeah.
Everyone has talents and everyone can work hard, but you have to have that kind of just desire to succeed in anything in life. I think you have to figure out what is that, how do I get there, and then really just drive to it and push yourself.
Do you have a day, like I can think back on a few, do you have a day where you just got in the car or got home or whatever, you just said, I won, like I just won. I just crushed it. Just had an awesome day. Like, this is what winning tastes like. Is there one like that stands out to you?
I don't know if there's one. I feel like I won the lottery a lot.
It's every day.
I was
he gets in his car every day.
I do. I really do. I feel like I won the lottery. I tell people at work all the time. I say I feel like I won the lottery a lot, mostly just because I really work with people I love. I work with some of my best friends now. I work with people I respect. I get to do really fun things, and I get to meet so many interesting people. And so, regardless of the money's one thing, right? But
sure.
I feel like if I had to go do something I hated every day, I would just not know what to do with myself. And
you'd be willing to give up the money.
Yeah,
to change your circumstances.
Exactly. So a lot of people make money, but they hate what they do, right? So I'd rather do something I love, and if money comes with it, that's fantastic. And I've been lucky to kind of have a balance of both. But I don't know if I have one day. I mean, there's so many days that something really great happens, and I'm like, wow, that was really cool. But I don't know if I have one that's like an aha moment.
Other than that first date with your wife.
That's true. That was.
Other than that, yeah. That's the obvious one, right?
do you guys have like a different mindset about money between you and your wife? You guys, do you see differences in how you think about money versus how she does? Obviously, you probably came from different backgrounds. We all come from different backgrounds, and sometimes that can influence.
Yeah. Luckily, actually, we're pretty aligned. You're right, because you can have, especially, I've never been married before, but I've seen a lot of marriages where money comes between them a lot, where you have someone that feels totally different about spending or saving. And so luckily, we're actually pretty aligned. I think I'm probably a little cheaper than she is. But then also I'm kind of more.
There's the upbringing, right? Yeah, there, probably.
Yeah. But then sometimes because of the upbringing, sometimes I appreciate the things more. And like, so for example, my dad always wanted to buy a car or a certain type of car. And he's like, when I hit this number or when I hit this age, I'm gonna do this.
What was it? What kind of car was it?
It wasn't anything specific. It was more like, hey, when I do this, I'm gonna get this. Or
gotcha.
And so my dad died when he was 63, and I was 25, and he just died literally one day, like. Totally healthy. I talked to him like 8 hours before. He actually was in Afghanistan at the time. He was doing small and medium business development right as the war was kind of going on over there. I talked to him right before he died, and so it made me think though, like I'm not going to wait my whole life to try to enjoy the things in life. So if I want to I'm never going to be frivolous. I'm never going to go out and buy a Ferrari, no matter how much money I have. That's probably not something I'm doing, even though I would love it. But to me, I was like, I want to have these things that I can enjoy, because literally it can change one day.
Yep.
And so that's where I think I'm a little different. I'd rather enjoy things like go on that vacation or take that extra thing, or maybe buy a little bit nicer car than we would have before, because tomorrow it could be over.
Right. Are you still buying one pair of Jordans a year?
Nah, a lot more than that now.
Yeah.
You have a closet, like a whole room for them?
So I used to have every single one, but now it's more things. Now it's like golf stuff. Like I'm a big golfer, so I just waste my money on golf clubs. I think
that's where the money's going.
Yeah, I think I can buy the golf game.
Right. You could have bought 2 Ferraris with what you've spent on golf.
I guarantee equipment. I could because every time like I have a bad round, I'm like, well, I need new clubs. Like, it's not me.
It's got to be
putter's
the
not working
swing
today.
Is perfect.
Yeah.
My swing is perfect. It's the clubs.
That's my problem then.
Yeah,
that's my problem.
My own father has a closet at his house that's in the garage that's full of putters. And it's like, what are you doing with all? Each of them is, really nice.
Yeah.
Scotty Cameron putters.
Exactly.
It's like, what are you doing with all these? He's like, well, it stopped working.
That's exactly right.
The mojo wore off.
Driving. So if I'm not a great driver, I may need a Ferrari.
You might need a new Ferrari.
That's
true.
I don't
That's
know.
true.
I will
love
say,
this.
driving
This is so
Ferraris are very fun. I noticed the watch too. Are you a watch guy?
I am a watch guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like it. I am. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I recognize a good Paneri chronograph when I see one.
Yes. Yeah. I don't like stuff that everyone else has though.
Yeah.
I'm kind of unique. So like Rolex or whatever. So
Right.
Panerai is the one that like very, very few people have. And it's funny because only people that know about them will talk about them.
Yeah.
Because they're very rare.
No, yeah, I like that watch a lot.
Oh,
people
thanks.
people don't know what it is usually, but I like it.
I didn't know. Sorry.
I
There's-
mean,
I need to do my research.
Most of their origin is like a diver's watch. They make really, kind of cool, different
So
complications.
actually the
and stuff.
origin was an Italian military watch.
Yeah.
Oh, that could be my watch. I'm Italian.
There
Yeah, there you go. Hey,
Hey,
we
there you
found we
go.
found one for you.
If anything you should take away today, that's it.
I need an
Right?
The
Italian
watch.
watch, and I need an Italian
a
car
Ferrari.
That's right.
to go with
Hey,
the watch.
Exactly.
How many times a month?
Very
can-
expensive meeting for me today.
How many times a month can Nate ask you for that watch? And how persistent will he have to be for it to
He's
happen?
not giving that.
Well, yeah,
up.
I
no,
know,
I was
that's
gonna
not
say,
chance.
he can be as persistent as he wants on this one.
I'll be an irritant immediately.
It's just
Yeah.
not hard to know. Oh man. So for people that come from a similar place like you, where they had some challenges in their upbringing and some really chaos, right? Like with your dad and stuff. It seems like that would be a tough situation. Where should somebody start if they want to make changes, if they want to set themselves on a new path? Like, what advice would you give to somebody? Because there's a lot of people that will come across our content and they're in that position themselves. What kind of advice would you give to those people?
I think it's finding really good mentors or friends. So I had a really, really good group of friends. They were all successful. They're all lawyers, doctors, bankers, and then also finding older, more successful people to sort of mentor you and find out what mistakes they made and have them give you the advice that they would have given themselves 20 years ago. Hey, don't do this. I made this mistake.
Right.
Learn from other people's mistakes. That's the easiest way to not make your own, is learn from other people's mistakes. So I think latching on to smarter, more successful people is a way for you to kind of to raise yourself up too.
Right. It's kind of it's almost like I don't want to say shortcut, but like a springboard to success, right?
100%.
Pushes you forward.
Because they have the formula. They've done it. And
Right.
so, what's the best way to learn is learn from someone that's done it.
Yeah. Someone that's been where you want to be. Right?
Exactly. 100%.
What would you say is like the biggest mistake or something that you would tell people to avoid, or some shortfall that you had that they
Don't
a
go
new
to law
person-
school.
Don't go to law school.
Don't go to law
Don't go to law school.
Do you hear
No,
that,
it's
everybody?
actually it has really helped me in my professional career. I couldn't
Yeah.
do what I do without it. Right?
Right.
We do a lot of legal work. We do a lot of
Due diligence,
Everything
like,
has some legal component. So
You probably wouldn't be where you are.
no,
if you hadn't
absolutely,
done it.
no,
Right.
definitely
It's
wouldn't
the
be.
first
So
stepping stone.
it's one of those things where I don't regret it, but I
If you
probably
can find
would,
another way.
Yeah.
Or view it as a means.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly right.
That's good. Well, our producers are giving me the wrap it up signal. So,
Okay.
We always end the show with asking our guests 2 pieces of advice that they would give to the world and to leave behind to their kids.
Son
This
or
is-
daughter.
Yeah, son
about
or
to find
daughter.
out.
They're gonna get really reflective here. So, what are the 2 main pieces of advice that you want the world to know that you knew? One for the world, one for your future kid.
I think just be nicer. I think there's so many people out there right now that are just not very nice, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I think we're so polarized. Our world is so polarized right now. I feel like it's so hateful. It's either you're Democrat or Republican, you hate each other. There's this or that, you hate each other. This religion, you hate each other. And I think what's missing is I think people are just being nicer to each other and understanding people have struggles out there, right? Not everyone is successful. Not everyone can do this. People have handicaps. There's so many different things that I think people don't understand. And you get wrapped up in your own world and your own life, and it's hard to get out and kind of think about other people. But I think we need more of that.
Absolutely. Is that what you would say to your?
I probably
your
would say
kid,
the
too?
same thing too. Is just be a little bit nicer. Be more understanding of people, right? I think when you grow up and you're in high school and you don't think about those things when you're
Right.
saying something mean to someone
Yeah.
else, but you look back on it now and you're like, I don't know, just be nicer to people. It
Yeah.
really affects people. I mean, there's just everyone's going through something. Like understand kind of what other people are going through.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate
That's
you being
good.
here. We look to, as your fund grows and stuff, we'd love to have you back to
please.
get updates and everything. We think it's an awesome thing that you guys are doing. That's all we have today for the Massif Impact Show. Like, follow, subscribe, share on social media. We'll be back with you guys soon. Thanks for watching.